Hi kids! Today in this video, we're gonna learn about the story of Esther part 2. Are you ready to learn about the story? So let's get started. When the Jews heard the law of the Medes and the Persians to have them killed on the 13th day of the 12th month, they started weeping and wailing. Many even put on sackcloth and ashes as a sign of mourning. When Mordecai heard of Haman's plan to kill the Jews, he tore his clothes, put on a sackcloth and ashes, and went around the city wailing very loudly and bitterly. When Esther heard about Mordecai's distress, she sent Hathach, one of the king's servants, with clothes for him to put on instead of the sackcloth, but he refused to put them on. Hathach was sent again by Esther to find out what was troubling Mordecai. Mordecai gave Hathach the text of the new law and explained how much Haman had promised to pay into the treasury to destroy the Jews. He also asked Hathach to tell Esther to go into the king's presence to beg for mercy and plead with him to save her people, the Jews. And Esther said, "Anyone who approaches the king's inner chamber without being summoned by the king is put to death, unless the king extends his golden scepter to them and spares their life. And I have not been summoned by the king for more than 30 days." Esther's words were reported back to Mordecai, and he sent her back with this message, which read, "Don't think because you live in the palace, you alone of all Jews will escape. If you remain silent, the Jews will perish. Who knows, but you have been chosen as queen to help us at this time." Esther sent a reply to Mordecai saying, "Gather all the Jews in Susa to pray and fast for me. Don't eat for 3 days. I will pray and fast with you. Then I will go to the king, even though he has not summoned me. If I die, I die." And on the third day, Esther put on her royal robes and stood in the inner court of the palace in front of the king's hall. When the king saw her, he was very pleased and held out his golden scepter to spare her life. The king looked at Esther and asked, "What is your request? Even if you ask for up to half the kingdom, I will give it to you." Hearing that, Esther replied, saying, "I would like to invite the king and Haman to a special banquet that I have prepared." So the king and Haman went to the banquet Esther had prepared. And the king looked at her and asked, "What is your request?" And Esther said, "I would like to invite the king and Haman to another banquet tomorrow. Then I will answer the king's question." Haman left the place in a good mood, but when he saw that Mordecai had not bowed or shown him respect, he was full of rage. Haman went to his friends and Zeresh his wife and boasted to them about his great wealth and his many sons and the ways that the king had honored him. He said, "I have been invited to a banquet by the king and queen tomorrow, but I cannot be happy while Mordecai the Jew is sitting at the king's gate." His wife and friends had an idea. They said, "Have a pole set up in the morning, ask the king to have Mordecai impaled on it." Hearing that, Haman delighted and he erected a pole that was 75 feet high. That night the king could not sleep, so he ordered the book of the chronicles of his reign to be brought in and read to him. When the king was read how Mordecai had exposed the plot to kill him, he asked, "What honor was given to Mordecai for doing this?" The attendants replied, saying, "Nothing has been done." And the king said, "Who's in the royal court?" And they replied, saying, "Haman is standing in the court." He had to come to ask for Mordecai to be executed by being impaled on the pole that he had erected. And the king ordered the servants, saying, "Bring Haman in." And the king asked Haman, "What should be done for a man the king wants to honor?" Thinking that the king wanted to honor him, Haman replied, saying, "Put the man in a royal robe the king has worn, and on a horse the king has ridden. Then get the king's most noble prince to lead the horse through the city, proclaiming, 'This is what is done for the man the king delights to honor.'" Hearing that, the king commanded, "Go at once and get the robe and horse, and then do as you have suggested for Mordecai the Jew who sits at the gate. Do not neglect any detail." So Haman had to robe Mordecai, put him on a horse, and lead him through the city, proclaiming, "This is what is done for the man the king honors." Humiliated Haman rushed home in grief and reported what had happened to his wife and friends. They replied, saying, "Since Mordecai the Jew has begun your downfall, you cannot stand against him. You will come to ruin." At that moment, the king's servant arrived to take Haman to the banquet Esther had prepared for him and the king. The end. And I hope you had fun learning about the story of Esther Part 2. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more Bible videos. Bye.